aggregator to collect those posts, and our goal is to help make some connections. Now, you're going to be seeing a series of webinars. We're rolling these out in the coming days. Our goal is to find the most relevant content right now and bring it to you quickly. Our first webinar is with Eric Hultgren. He's the Director of Social Media and Content Marketing for MLive Media Group. Eric's talking about how to help your customers right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of confusion. Our goal is to maybe clear up just a little bit of that today. Thanks, Eric and MLive, for joining us. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, like Stephen said, my name is Eric Hultgren, and I'm just going to kind of give you a lay of the land of what's going on as far as the internet and how consumers are searching, some examples of some brands that are doing it well right now, and then some things that you guys can do or should be thinking about doing with your brand immediately. So we have seen this a trillion times. This is a photo of COVID-19, which has quite literally taken over the world, right? When there was a survey put out early this week about the impact of coronavirus on your business over the next 6 months, you can see here 72% see that it will have an effect. And that unknown number obviously will shift into one of these cells as we get here. What will be something to look for as marketers and business owners over the next 6 months is, out of this, you will see innovations, right? If you go back to the crisis of 2008, that is where Uber comes out of. So when we're in these sort of moments, it's when communities come together and can innovate and create profound change. You can see here the mentions of coronavirus across social media hits about 20 million mentions on the 11th or 12th of March as we start to do self-quarantining. You can see how social media on coronavirus starts to unfold in peaks and valleys. Every time there's a press conference or some sort of story, there's a huge peak, then there's a little bit of a valley, and then the peak rises and rises. When we're talking about traffic growth or decline, Neil Patel put this piece together. You can see here that finance, food, and healthcare, along with media and pharma, are up, where just about every other sector is down, travel taking the biggest hit of that. And so they're starting to leverage social media to do things like don't cancel, postpone, to save tourism, which is very similar to what the restaurant industry is doing, right? With either buying gift cards or doing takeout or however you can help support these restaurants. And the one thing to pay attention, if you're of a design sort of nature, you can notice that both of these use yellow, and they use yellow for a very specific reason, because what yellow does to your brain is instills optimism. So they're trying to save tourism and the restaurant industry and letting you know that there will be an end to this some way, somehow, right? Okay, I want to show this to you though, because this will show you what is going on right now. This is a Google Trends search that compares the word "the," which is the most used word in the English language, to the word coronavirus. And you can see that we now use the word coronavirus in searches more than we use the word "the." And so when Stephen kicked this off, we're talking about how we can help one another in our communities, and most importantly, how we can help our customers go through this, because clearly they have questions. We have questions. Everybody on this call has never done this before. We're all trying to get through this and figure out the best way to do it. But when we're looking at this volume of search, what sort of things can we do as brands, right? So here's a couple brands who are figuring out what to do during the coronavirus. You can see Signs by Craney are in here, and then a couple that you may know and a couple that you may not. So this is Firefly. They do out-of-home marketing, and they have been in San Francisco where it's been hit very hard. They've been putting up helpful messages on Lyft cars and other cars that will carry the out-of-home networking. And so they can share with people who were at that point when they weren't shuttered in place, they can share with people on the street information about what to do about the coronavirus. Signs by Craney are offering free signs to restaurants that are doing takeout and drive-through only. So this is a part of your actual community that's leaning into figuring out how to help these restaurants stay open and make money so they can keep people employed. The Ad Council running an Alone Together campaign to show how we can slow the spread of COVID-19, and means that we don't have to be solo, right? We can still be together, just in a different way. This digital way in which we're getting together is something that the Ad Council is continuing to run ads on Twitter. This is where this one came from. It's from Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. Signature Brew. Now, you may never have heard of these guys. They are out of the UK, and they are offering for their patrons what they're calling a pub in a box. So when you go for takeout there, they will give you a 6-pack of beer, they will give you some snacks, and they will give you your own trivia game so that you can come home and experience what a English pub is like inside your own home. So they're not just doing takeout for their beer, they're doing an experience, because as people are home and looking for something to do, they want to be a part of that experience. So people are telling stories about how this beer was the thing that helped them as they had family game night or whatever they were doing with Signature Brew. It allows them to be together. You might have seen this on St. Patrick's Day, but this is what Guinness put out.
And we've been lucky part of your St. Patrick's Day for generations. While we know this year things feel different, we've learned over time that we're pretty tough when we stick together. So what do you really need for St. Paddy's Day cheer? A pint? Sure, we'll take one. Some corned beef? Yeah, you're offering. Irish music? We'll sing along. A big parade? Don't worry, we'll march again. On St. Patrick's Day, we're all Irish. But let's not forget that every day we're all human. What matters is being with people you care about. Whether you're planning to safely celebrate at the pub or hosting at home, if you can call the people around you, friends or family, you've already won. When you raise a pint of Guinness, also remember to raise each other up. Be good to one another. Celebrate safely. Thank the ones protecting us. And now or later, don't forget to stop in and say hi to all our friends in the pubs and bars. As for us, we signed a 9,000-year lease on our brewery a while back, so we're not going anywhere. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And so this is obviously a large-scale brand that was able to pivot very quickly and is committing $500,000 to give back to communities where they live, work, and celebrate. Skillshare is offering some free programming. If you're like me and you have kids at home, you're looking for something for them to do as you've all of a sudden become a homeschool teacher. Skillshare is offering some of that stuff, which has been brilliant. Heinen's is a grocery store that is out of Cleveland, Ohio, but is all over the nation. And if you've never heard of this brand, that's okay. One of the things, aside from these two, I think, awesome posts, the one on the left where they're closing to everybody except for seniors from 8 to 9 a.m. to allow them to shop and kind of minimize and increase social distancing. They also, if you're like me, you got emails from everybody you've never remembered you got contact with, right? The ice cream store you went and had vacation with 5 years ago sent you a COVID email, right? Heinen's took the opportunity to send to everyone in their database an email that was literally 5 different stories about that looked like the post on the right. So it was, what sort of things should you be eating? How much should you be hydrating? Things that you can do to stay healthy, and had very little to do with the store itself. And so they were using their idea of, or their access to their CRM, their access to their customers, to give them actionable information that they could use today. And then they're echoing that in their social. So if you don't belong to their email database, you can get that same content when you're on Facebook or Instagram. Slack is, if you haven't used Slack, they're great for keeping teams together when teams are actually apart. And so they've been writing since late last week about how teams who are now trying to work remotely right now can work better. Scholastic is another company that is trying to help parents teach their kids at home. They are offering a free account for Watch and Learn and Bookflix. And what they do is every single day, you can see it at the bottom of the slide, they have a different thing to study. So on that particular day, it was rabbits. So there's 2 stories about a rabbit, there's a video about a rabbit, and then there's a quiz, and you can go on and on and on. So they're just trying to help parents get through the day while they are trying to homeschool their kids and work. Netflix has rolled out a Chrome extension, if you haven't seen this, which will allow you to watch movies with friends, just not together. And so this is yet another way where brands are pivoting very quickly to allow you to use an app that wasn't necessarily designed to be used this way. Audible rolled out yesterday. The website is stories.audible.com. And what they're doing is they have unearthed or unreleased or released, I should say, stories for kids ages 0 to 18 that are free for them to listen to. And so there's a whole bunch of stories separated by age group. And then as you go further down the page, if you're looking at it right now, if your kids are any sort of in Spanish immersion or Italian immersion or French immersion, any sort of immersion programs, they've got foreign language books below that as well, so they can take advantage of keeping up on their language while they're at home. This is Shine Spirits. They are out of Oregon. They pivoted in a very profound way. They're a distillery, and they shut down the distillery in order to do this. They made hand sanitizer with the stuff that they had in their distillery, the equipment, I should say, and then gave it all away. So it was their chance to give back to the community and pivot their brand in a time that their community needed it. Ford, on at least the credit side, right, is doing something for support if you're going through, as we all are, COVID, right? If you're leasing or financing, they're here to help. So they're putting out helpful messages, at least on the credit side. So, well, let's go back one. This is Dettol. They're out of India, and they were running a hand washing challenge on TikTok, right? You know that TikTok, if you've seen me speak, is one of my favorite things to talk about. And this is a brand who uses it to its best ability. So they have about 15 of these people doing the hand wash challenge dance. And for some context, right, they're using their brand to get this messaging out. And it was viewed 9 billion with a B, 9 billion times in 4 days. And so one of the things I like about this particular example is it goes to show that as marketers and as business owners, now's the time where we can start to be creative, start thinking out of the box. And one of the ways that you can do that if you're working at home is use like what we're using right now. Jump on a Microsoft Teams meeting or jump on Slack or any of those other channels and start whiteboarding with people in your organization or out of your organization so you can see what sort of ideas have legs and how you can execute on them. And with that, let's talk about our customers, right? So where are they? They're likely in one of two places, right? They're trying to figure out what's going on with coronavirus, as I showed early on, or they're watching cat videos to forget about what they just learned about the coronavirus. And so when we're talking about consumers and where their brain is, that will advise us as to the type of content that we can put on the internet. And they're ostensibly in 4 places. This is a look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you may or may not be familiar with, but the premise of it is we move from the bottom of the triangle, the red, to the blue. And when we're in loving and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization, according to Maslow, we have reached a higher level of humanity, right? We've moved beyond the fight or flight of safety needs and physiological needs into a higher level of living, right? And so when something like this happens, a global pandemic happens, we obviously rocket back down to the first 2 and have to build ourselves back up. And so when we're doing self-isolation or social distancing, that makes love and belonging and esteem and self-actualization difficult to manage. And it's a thing that general managers and owners of companies and all of us are trying to figure out in the leadership capacity, how we can make sure that everybody on our team and everybody in our world has a feeling of loving, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. So here's where your customers are, right? There's the group that we'll call the pump the brakes. These are the people that are stopping everything. As soon as this happens, they are stopping everything except for the essentials. And even those, they're going to economize to the best of their ability. So they are looking for deals, and they are absolutely in what we would call fight or flight, right? And this is the segment of the population that I think about most in times like this, is how can we help them feel more comfortable and help them work through this as a community. The second group, as we go up a little bit, is what we'll call the pained but patient, right? These are the people who have optimism for the future. You know, they are confident that we will get through this, but right now they are a bit more on the pump the brakes side, right? So they are pausing just about everything except for essentials and looking to economize just like the former group, but they're a bit more optimistic and a bit more able to look at the glass in a different way, if you will. The next group is the comfortably well off, right? They feel like they have everything they need to get through this. And so their consumer buying habits don't shift all that much. They might think a little bit more about their purchases, but they don't stop spending. And then the final group is the live for today group, which you've probably seen all over social media, right? These are people who they're not going to stop doing life the way they've always done life, and they're going to continue to spend in the way that they've been spending until one thing intercedes with them, and that's typically unemployment. If they get unemployed, obviously they stop, but anything outside of that, they will continue to spend as if nothing has changed. And so if we look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs like this, for us, when we're trying to talk to our consumers, this is how they see it, right? And so from the bottom, it's expendables, things they absolutely don't need, postponables, things that they can put off for another day, treats. These are things, I mean, this could be, depending on where you are, this could be something as simple as ice cream. And then at the top of that triangle is essentials, things that they absolutely positively need, and they've got to figure out how to get. You know, it's why you're seeing runs on toilet paper and rice and butter and milk, right? These are people who are collecting essentials. And so here's some stuff that we should all do as brands and marketers. First, don't disappear. Your community needs to hear from you in one way, shape, or form. And this is our chance as a community to rise up and help them, as well as help ourselves stay in business and stay vibrant. So we don't want to disappear. We might want to pause for a second and think about what we're going to put up, but we don't want to shut everything off and disappear. And you don't want to do that for two reasons. One, because depending on what you're doing, your consumer might be looking for you. And they might be looking for you to either ease them through this, help them with some sort of information, or a distraction. And the second reason you don't want to disappear is because when this abates or slows down and we get back to whatever the new normal is, you're going to have to start from ground zero, where brands who have been trying to figure this out the entire time will be ready to jump back into whatever normal means for us on the other side of this. So we don't want to disappear. We also want to mitigate panic, guys. There is enough out there to keep people in fight or flight that we don't need to help. And so as we're putting stuff on social, we want to make sure that we're leaning into how we can help our consumers, not terrify them or scare them. They need information, that is absolutely true, but what they don't need to be is terrified. And I would say this, even if you've got neighborhood groups on Facebook and things like that, we all want to work as a community to, as best as we possibly can, mitigate the panic, because we have the power to do that. And so as you're building out and crafting your posts, make sure that we're leaning into the positivity and not inducing or helping or inciting any sort of panic. Unautomate your marketing. So look right now at anything that you have scheduled and make sure that it reaches the tone or tenor that you want as a brand, and stop the stuff that doesn't. I was sharing this morning on another one of my calls. I received an email from a realtor yesterday on the first day of spring that said, "Spring has sprung. Here's what you should do to spruce up the outside of your home and get ready to sell, because now's the perfect time to buy." Like, it was a completely tone deaf, pre-scheduled, automated email to go out on the first day of spring to lean into what we would do if things were normal. But this particular entity wasn't paying attention to the stuff they had scheduled. My mother shared a story with me yesterday that Groupon's also sort of struggling in this, because they sent out a Groupon yesterday for massages, which may or may not be okay to do, depending on your point of view. That said, as a brand, comes off as a little bit tone deaf in an age of social distancing. So if you've got stuff scheduled, go look at it and make sure that it should run the way in which you have it running. And if it shouldn't, you should turn it off. Dial back your posting. If you're concerned about what to say, you don't need to post every single day. You do not want to disappear, but you don't need to post every day if you don't have something to say, or you feel like it would be a little bit tone deaf. So if it feels right to dial it back, and you can always dial back up as things get different, right? It's changing on a minute by minute basis here. And so what we are talking about today might be totally different on Monday. But think about dialing back your posting if that is applicable to your brand, right? If you've got something that is, let's say, highly reliant on conversion, right? The posts that you're putting up are all about downloading my ebook or purchasing a product, and that's the only stuff that you have on social. You might want to think about dialing that back just a little bit. You don't need to stop it. We all need to press on as businesses as best as we can, but we don't want to inundate people with marketing messages that just feel like they're off the story of the day, the zeitgeist, if you will. Focus on brand. Now is a great chance for you to turn your social into branding, right? Continue to keep your brand top of mind. And when we're in downturns like this, even in the early stages like this, brands that are there for their consumer, that build trust and lean into empathy, tend to do much better when things turn around because they've got some brand loyalty. And so as you're thinking about putting stuff out, focus on branding, getting your name out and what it is that you do, and most importantly, how you can help in a time like this. And make sure that branding focuses on your core values. Now is not the time to change your core values because you think that will either get you more likes or comments or shares. Stick to your core values and what your brand does and what your brand does well, and that will pay dividends in the long run. So when you're focusing on brand, make sure you're sticking to the core values and that whatever you are putting up is on tone with what we're all talking about and on brand for what you do as a profession. And then empathy. The stuff that we should be putting up should speak to the empathy of the day. And by that, I mean, the people you're talking to are scared. You know, the amount of, I'm sure everyone on this call has gotten texts and emails and messages of people who have already lost their jobs, or people who think that they're going to lose their job, or don't know how they're going to keep the lights on, right? And one of the stories here on the west side of the state was about a diner that was concerned about how long this thing will go because of the razor thin margin that some small to medium businesses run on. And that's, you know, if you don't know, there's 1.8 million small businesses in the state that make up 99% of the total businesses here and half of our employment. And so it's behoove all of us to make sure that we're working as much as humanly possible to do things like this and share our knowledge, to make sure that as a community, as a state, as a city, as a country, that we lift each other up. And so when you're putting stuff out in the ecosystem, you want to make sure that you're being empathetic to those around you and where they might be and how you can help, right? What can you do to ease some of their suffering, whatever that suffering might be? And then be a public service. If you aren't a public service in a literal sense, right, you're not refuse or water or electricity, how can you be a public service? What sort of messages can you share, the things that are happening in Flint that will help get the word out, right? And so as a community, you know, leaning into the assets that the chamber is putting together, what sort of content that can you be curating from the chamber and all of other services in Flint to share with your audience to be a public service about restaurants that are open, about you know, whatever other information is coming out about COVID that will help them get through their day. You know, if Meijer is changing hours like they are, or Walmart is changing hours like they are, how can you be a public service? And then I would urge you to do the same thing in your personal life. You know, here in my neighborhood, we've got a private messaging set up in a private group on Facebook, and a bunch of us have set up a shopping protocol for anybody in our neighborhood over the age of 60. So we're going and shopping for them because we want to be of service to them and make sure that they've got all the stuff that they need and that they don't have to leave the house. And so think about how you as a brand can be a public service to people and be positive. You know, there are plenty of terrible stories out there, and trust me, they will find those stories. But we have an opportunity here to lean into the positivity and the strength and the, you know, can-do attitude and the fighting that I'm seeing with the brands that I've been speaking to for the last 4 days, that we want to get up and we want to fight this thing and we want to stay open and we want to make sure that our communities are vibrant. There is only, guys, and we'll talk about this, you know, for a little bit longer. There's only so long that we can consume the actual news before it actually starts to mess with your head a little bit. You can only stay in fight or flight for so long before it tends to mess with your head. And so as brands, if we can be positive and share the positive news and the stories that are coming out, and even if we've got to share what we might call bad news, if we can do it in a way that's positive and can help people understand why we are doing what we're doing, why we are changing our hours, why we're changing the way in which we interact with our consumers or customers, or however we're doing that. We want to stay positive as humanly possible at this point. And get creative. Like I said, you've seen some brands that have gotten creative in the examples that I've shown you. There's plenty of examples in your town and towns all over Michigan of brands that are getting creative in order to lean into, what is our current state of normal. So like I said, one of the ways to get creative is get on the phone or get on Slack or get on some sort of messaging service and start talking with people that you admire or want to reach out to, and just bounce some ideas off people. Just having another voice to go, hey, does this sound right? What should I do here? Is this a good idea? And they might go, that's a great idea, but what if you did this? And now you've got some sort of synergy and creativity, and you're creating a group of people that can get together and start bouncing ideas off each other virtually to understand how to pivot and innovate and move as the news that we're getting moves faster and faster and faster. Build community. This is an excellent opportunity, even though we're apart from one another physically, that we can digitally build community. And you're seeing that all over Facebook in the groups that are popping up. You're seeing it all over. If you haven't spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, you are seeing lots of community building happening on LinkedIn as professionals are getting together and sharing their knowledge in order to help one another get through a time like this. And be solutions driven. To be a leader in marketing and business and sales in something like this, we have to focus on how we solve problems, not what the problems are themselves. Like, the problems themselves are interesting in and of themselves for a minute, right? But the most important thing, I believe, is that we've got to be solutions driven. How can we fix the things that are broken right now and allow ourselves to build for tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day by continuing to foster a air of creativity and an ability to drive solutions. And when you come together like you are this morning, this is how this stuff happens, right? I don't have all the answers. Stephen doesn't have all the answers. Like I said right before we started, none of us have been here before. And so we're just trying to come together and do the best that we possibly can for one another, for our communities, for our customers, for the state, and for the country. And lastly, you have to, and I implore you, please, if you've only listened to 90 seconds of what I've been talking about all morning, listen to this. You have to find some space for yourself. You've got to find some time to find some quiet and allow your brain to just chill. Even if it's only 10 minutes, you have to find that space in the day, because we can't, this is not going to be over tomorrow. We've got a long road ahead of us that we can get through as a community. But if you're running at a mile a minute right now because we're all in full panic mode, and believe me, we can't keep up that pace. And so you guys have to think about carving out time in your day. Like I've carved out 2 times during the day since this started that our family goes for a walk outside for as long as we're going to be able to do that, right? We go for a walk outside so that we get a break in the day and we go do something together as a family, because I need that headspace so I can just sort of clear my head and get back to the work at hand. And so please start building, as you've got some time this weekend, go for a walk, go outside, enjoy the spring weather, find some time for yourself, because if we, and I know this is a little bit woo-woo, but bear with me for a second. If we're not okay, we can't make sure others are okay. So we've got to make sure that we're taking some time to make sure that we are okay. And the last thing, Seth Godin put this out yesterday, and before I take some questions, I just thought it was profound, right? And he's talking about today. We only get it once, so why waste it? We can spend it in fear, or we can spend it in the possibility for the next person. We can spend it alone, or we can create a digital but real connection with someone else. And it only takes a day to make change happen. The ocean is made of drops. And I want to answer as many questions as possible. I'm also doing this thing, if you haven't seen on Facebook or TikTok or LinkedIn, I'm doing 15-minute virtual coffee meetings that we can either do by phone, or I've got a calendar set up on LinkedIn that you can set your own appointment. So if you just want to talk through an issue, or you just need somebody to bounce some ideas off of, I would love to be that person. And so I've set up 15-minute increments Monday through Friday from about 8 to 5 or 5:30 at night. And I would love to touch base with you on a more personal level if I could. And with that, Stephen, I can give this back to you and we can take some questions and answers.
Anyone have any questions for Eric? Might take a second for folks to type.
It's all good. Sorry about my background. I had to move because of the Wi-Fi, so I'm sitting in a staircase.
Give it a second. That was the point about kind of separating is really important for me. It's been so easy to just kind of post up here in my home office and not leave. You know, come in at 8 a.m. and leave at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And
right.
The day flew by, didn't exercise, ate like crap, drank a ton of coffee. It's just not, it's a good reminder.
Yeah, we need to get out a little bit. So
I'm not seeing questions, so I think we'll adjourn. I want to say thanks, Eric. That was great. The positive, the information, that's where we need to be, because you're right. There's been so much news. My stuff's been blown up with just all of everything that's happening. How can we separate ourselves and just get back into the work that we're all trying to do? And I encourage you, call Eric, do the 15-minute conversation. He's a wealth of knowledge, very valuable, and it's just an opportunity to kind of separate yourself from what's going on and talk to someone as positive as Eric.
Stephen, real quick, we've got some questions coming through, so I'm going to hand it back over to Eric.
Good.
So Ashley didn't have a question, but just wanted to say thank you. So I will publicly say thank you. And for whatever reason, guys, my replies in this will come as John Hultgren. It's not a different person. My first legal name is John. I just go by Eric. So if it looks weird, I apologize. For some reason, it's Eric everywhere else except for in the comments. So what do I think the new normal will be after this, Eric? Well, here's the, I think Stephen hit on it a second ago. And let me get to a spot that isn't an ugly staircase, so at least we can. I think like we will walk away from this. My hope anyway is that we have a better understanding of what working at home entails, and how our teams can get work done while being at home and connected with their family. That's the one thing I hope is the new normal. And the other thing is that we appreciate the work that these communities are doing to keep the lights on, right? And I mean that literally and figuratively, right? And the restaurants that are trying to keep the doors open and keep people employed by doing takeout, the retailers that are trying to switch as fast as humanly possible to e-commerce so that they have a space where they can sell their wares, right? Because we can't go shopping like we normally would. So my hope for the new normal is that those are at least two things that come out of it. As far as like, what is the business new normal? I think it's too early to tell. I mean, we're obviously on the early side of this, and it's changing every day. But here's the thing that I will say, as far as the new normal, you're going to find people, and they're on this call right now, and they're in your communities, and they're in the state of Michigan, and they're in the United States, that are going to take this as a challenge to innovate and quite literally change the world. And so you're going to see stuff come out of this that is groundbreaking and fantastic. And that's the stuff that I look for. It is scary and we are in scary times, but out of those scary times comes some cool stuff. And so that's what I would answer as far as what I think the new normal is. And then the next question, can you talk about the importance of visual content following the CDC regulations right now? I'm not necessarily, you mean like being away from one another? How do you make visual content? I would say this, guys. I don't necessarily understand the full context of this question, but I can say this because I've answered this a couple of times this morning. One of the things, if you're able to and you're putting out content, try and have your team members in it. I'm not saying go into the office and take photos of 20 or 30 people, but if you have photos of your team doing what your team does, people want to see people right now. So any visual representation of your team that you can get out there, I think you will see will do better than just static product images if that's what you're doing. And so I would say visual content is key. And I didn't have time to create this for today, but I promise If you go to LinkedIn this afternoon, I'll repost it. The other thing is, you will see, to answer the new normal, you will see a lot of people fall in love with the live product on Instagram and on Facebook. And the thing that I'm going to do this afternoon for Facebook is Facebook just rolled out a thing on Facebook Live about 3 or 4 weeks ago where they stopped calling it Facebook Live for brands. It's called Live Producer. And what Live Producer allows you to do is not only schedule your lives as if they're television shows, which in a time where people are trying to figure out when their next distraction is coming, this is a great thing. So if you're a musician, you can set up your next gig from your basement by scheduling a Facebook Live. The other thing is, if you have multiple locations or if you're a real estate agency that has agents that have brand pages, you are now able to cross-post Facebook Lives across as many pages as you're connected with. So that will allow you to spread your message further, faster with all the pages that you're connected with. And inside the lives, you're able to do polling and questions. That's all the stuff that you can do right now. When they were beta testing this last year and a little bit the year before, they had a function in there where you could invite guests in. So like you see Steven and I right now, that didn't make it to the public alpha or the live version that you're looking at right now. My guess is they're going to work as fast as humanly possible to allow that to happen, to continue to compete with products like Teams and Twitch and all the other things that will allow you to do that. So Facebook Live or streaming on Twitch or things like that will be also the new normal as people try and get content out right now.
Any other questions, Bree?
Hold on. Will I share my deck? Absolutely. I will send it to Steven here in a second. We're trying to keep staff on through this Fenton Winery and Brewery. That said, we're exploring community resources, group funding, et cetera, to supplement income. Is this appropriate? Yes. Is this appropriate to post, to reach out in a family basis of regulars? And I think yes. Joe, the other thing that you could do is if you have a CRM database of those customers, email them as well. And if you're emailing only, also remember, guys, that their email inbox looks like your email inbox. So it's every brand that you've ever touched in the last decade is sending you COVID emails, and then your thing is trying to get through there. So if you're just doing email, take that content out of the email and put it in social places where people can find it. And Joe, if you're putting that stuff on just social and you have the ability to email them, I would email them and email them directly from you, right? Make it seem like it's coming from you, not the brand. So Joe is saying, hey, we're trying to keep the lights on during this. Here's how if you love what we do, here's how you can help if you're able to, right? Because not everyone will be able to, but as a community, we can build each other up. Okay. Crystal says, thank you for emphasizing self-care. Yes, we do. Please do that. Have you seen any creative employee support programs emerging during this time? The one that we're doing, and I don't necessarily this speaks to employee support programs, but we as an entity are meeting every morning at 9 a.m. and sharing what happened with our day. And we've gotten so good at it in the last 4 days that we're able to go through essentially the whole company in about 20 minutes. So everybody has a chance to say something. And then this afternoon at 4:45, we're doing a virtual happy hour. So we're getting together and playing some music and having a few drinks together virtually. So we're doing that stuff. But other than that, I have not seen any, but I haven't really been looking for those. Next one. How do we help the other industries that are affected out there? So that's a large question. And I guess my answer to that would be share your knowledge with those other industries if they need help, right? If they're in manufacturing and it's shut down, share job opportunities, right? You see places like, and these are stopgap measures, but places like Meijer, because of where we are looking for stockers, right? And so there's other opportunities out there if people get laid off that we can shift them to a job that might not be ideal, but at least keeps them working. Share stuff like that. Share it as the brand page. So if you're the chamber and you hear about a company that's looking to hire 1,000 people to solve some sort of need that we're in the middle of, share that stuff. So other industries that are affected can get the information out. And then because it's not really identifying necessarily an industry outside of, if you're talking about hotels and tourism, you can talk about, you can talk about what's going to happen when this all loosens up, right? Like we all will get back to some version of quote unquote normal, and travel might look a little bit different, but we will travel. So think about those guys, and maybe think about gift cards or sharing in some way, shape, or form that will help those industries that are in desperate need, right? When you get my deck, you'll see who they are, and you probably know who they are. And if you have the ability to help them, do that. And if you have here's the other thing I would say, for any industry that you have a great interaction with, share that with your network as a person, right? So if you go out and get takeout from, because I know they're on, right? If you go to Halo Burger and get takeout and somebody smiled and gave you an incredible experience and it alleviated your stress for figuring out what you're going to make for dinner tonight before you go watch Netflix, tell that story. And same with anything else. If you go to the gas station and somebody does something, like, share those stories so people know what things are open and what experiences out there, and that we aren't just laying down and waiting, right? We are fighting. That's what we're doing. So I guess that's what I would say with that. Share the deck with the management team. You got that. Yeah, absolutely, guys. You guys can have the deck. And like Steven said, I'm doing these 15-minute touch bases. So if you need them, please take me up on it. I would love to talk to you, and we can do it via FaceTime or Teams or just on the phone, however you guys want to do it. But there you go.
Any other questions? This stuff's great. Sharing those positive experiences. It's certainly it would be nice to see more of those things in the content feeds.
Sure would.
Over the weekend.
Right. Yes.
Well, we'll go ahead and conclude. Eric, thank you. I think this was really great. Make sure reach out to Eric for that conversation. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to continue to work on more conversations like these. If you have any feedback about your experience, any technical difficulties, this was our first one, so please reach out to me directly. Let me know this. I think I heard I might have been cut off at the beginning, so I just want to say again that we're using a hashtag support Flint Genesee. There's no and, support Flint Genesee. If your organization is doing e-gift cards, pickup, delivery, if you have something that you need, if you have something to offer, post that, use the hashtag. Our marketing folks are using an aggregator so that we can collect up those posts and do our best to make some connections. Thanks again, Eric. Thank you, Bree, our producer. And I hope all of you have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.